Today I'm going to talk to you about 10 things I wish I knew before I started decluttering my household items. These things will save you time, energy, and stress as you decide what to do with 20 to 30 years of stuff. Whether you are Swedish death cleaning or just decluttering, you'll find helpful information here. And number 5 is something huge in every sense of the word. You'll have to let me know what you think about that one. So let's get started. Do you know what a PP is? It's my little term for a pandemic purchase. And I wish that I would have known that I could declutter those PPs a long time ago, but I finally did get a clue. My perfect example is a set of white dishes that I bought that I could only use or did only use for special occasions. It took up my entire space of the top of my cabinet plus some of my shelf. And that meant that the rest of my big cabinet where I keep my dishes was so congested that I couldn't really maneuver around in there. In addition to the white dishes, I also had serving pieces. Now I did end up keeping those. I'm a firm believer that if something is working for you and you actually use it, then go ahead and keep that. Being that I only use these on the holidays, it just was not worth the space to me. Another huge pandemic purchase that I made was a giant wall shelf. I will talk to you about that in just a little bit, but let's just say it wasn't my best purchase that I ever made. Now, during the pandemic, I was a mess just like everybody else, and I really needed my home to be a comfy, cozy space for me. These items really did make me feel better at a point in my life that I was really low. However, over time, they did diminish my quality of life, and I am so happy that I decluttered them. Now, here are a couple of examples of things that I can now reach thanks to me getting rid of those white dishes. These are cute little pig plates that I got a long time ago for my kids, and every time that I make cookies, even to this day, I pull these out and give them their cookies. I wasn't able to reach these because those white dishes sucked up the entire top of my cabinet, meaning that everything else had to be condensed to 2 shelves. I get to use these constantly. Why? Because I remember that they're there, because I can see them. This is another example. I absolutely love to serve desserts in this, like cobbler with a little whipped cream on top of it, or ice cream with apple topping that I make homemade. So I get to use these now too, and it's just another example of less is more, quality over quantity, and things you use over quantity as well. Garage items are another thing I wish I knew what I was dealing with before starting to declutter. Now, when my dad passed away, I inherited a lot of tools, rakes, brooms, you name it. If it was in a garage, I inherited it. However, I kept a good amount myself because I just wasn't sure if I needed it or not. And last spring, I went to town on going through that stuff. My memories of my dad live in my heart and my mind, and I don't need those physical items to remember him. A little backstory is every Christmas, I would get my dad a screwdriver or some other kind of tool because he was constantly losing them. I would stand there when I was a kid and help him out. You know, he'd say, hand me a screwdriver or hand me pliers. So when it came time to letting those things go, that was really difficult on me because I really associated my dad with the tools. So I kept some things, but I let the bulk of it go to someone else who could use it. Little intermission. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video, and please leave me a comment below. I would absolutely love it if you gave me some ideas that I haven't covered here. I wish that I would have known when decluttering my household items is that I didn't need to keep all my pots and pans. I don't even know how I had all of these pots and pans in my kitchen to begin with. I have a super big, long cabinet that I stored my pots and pans in. So anytime I needed something, I would go in and reach past everything and finally dig one out. At times I was worried that things were going to fall on me. Now the funny thing is I didn't sell or donate most of these. I actually ruined them, but I did not replace them. So what happened, for instance, with my Dutch oven, I had an all-clad Dutch oven and I absolutely annihilated it making rice. I could not scrub it clean, so it was a goner. And instead of replacing it, I just went ahead and lived without it to see if other items that I had in my pots and pans collection would work instead. And guess what? It did. I was so happy. I got rid of so much, and now every single thing in that cabinet is something that I actually use. Now, the one item I did sell on eBay was my turkey roaster, which I never actually used for turkey. I used to make only one dish with it, and that was my stuffed green peppers. But I figured out that I could use my blue Dutch oven here, and it has a lid. So instead of wrapping tinfoil over those peppers in the turkey roaster, this is actually a better solution to making them. The thing is I waited to see if that was a hole. I didn't just race out and replace them, and I'm really glad that I did. If you come across pots and pans that you think that you don't need, put them somewhere else in your house so that they're out of the way. Live like that a little bit. See if you actually don't need them or won't use them. And then you can part ways with them at that time. And if you do need them back, you'll have them. I also wish I knew that it's okay to declutter extra bed pillows, comforters, duvet covers, towels, washcloths, dish towels, throw pillows, you name it. Well, if you watched my video on what I wish I knew before I decluttered my clothes and accessories, you'll know I had an issue with duplicates. And the same goes with duvet covers. One time I decided I needed 2 duvet covers. One I could use for spring and summer, and 2 I could use for fall and winter. But guess what happened to me? I couldn't wait to pull out the one I use for spring and summer. That was by far my favorite one, and it's the one I have on my bed right here. But I made my decision right in the end. I pared down to just 1 duvet cover, and I've never looked back on that one. So you'll have to let me know in the comments, do you struggle with this category? And if so, are you going to make some changes in it? Now this one is the huge one that I spoke about at the beginning. What do you think it is? It's furniture. This is something that we have in our house that we never consider decluttering. I had a situation like this in my home. I had a giant wall shelf, and on it was a bunch of books and collections. Well, let's back up a second. How did I end up with this giant shelf in my house? One day my son called and said, "Hey, I need some furniture for my apartment. Can you come with me?" Of course I did. And we walk into this clearance center, and there it was. Huge shelf. It was something I was looking for, but it wasn't quite right. In the end, the deal got me, and I brought it home. That was totally a mistake because I settled. Big pieces of furniture like that are visual clutter and physical clutter. Visually, they're constantly there, and physically, they clutter our environment. One time, my husband said something really interesting that I never forgot, and that is that he likes to see the floor. And I thought, wow, what a great tip. I always think of that now. Every time I'm shopping for a piece of furniture, I think, is this going to be worth my floor space? I would challenge you to walk around your house, really look at some of this furniture. Do you actually use it? Is it serving a purpose for you, or has it just always been there and you haven't even looked at it as clutter? If you eliminate some of this furniture, you are going to be shocked at how good your space feels. This is a really good one, and I am positive I'm not the only person that struggles with this, and that is small appliances. Now, when we moved into this house, I immediately got rid of my microwave. Now, I know a lot of people will say you couldn't live without it, and my family agreed. My husband, my kids, they were pretty upset with me that I got rid of it. But it ended up that we could use our stove, our stovetop, and we can use our oven to warm things. It really ended up being fantastic because we didn't have hot and cold spots in our food any longer, and things just tasted better. Another thing that we got rid of is a coffee maker, and we replaced it with a Chemex. Now, a Chemex looks like a little beaker, and it has a filter that you put in it, just a little paper filter. You pour your coffee in it, and then you pour over hot water, and it actually makes the best cup of coffee ever. The filter absorbs all the acid, so you have a really clean cup of coffee. Another item that we decluttered is our crock pot. And I know many of you probably disagree with that, but for my family, it worked out just fine. We actually had this Dutch oven, and it does the same type of job. It slow cooks your food to perfection. All of the meat is tender, and I just didn't have room in my cabinet for both. And I opted for this Dutch oven because it actually has multiple purposes for me. I use it for many different things, not just slow cooking. So maybe you don't have a small 10 by 10 kitchen like me, but maybe you struggle with small appliances that take up a lot of space or that you just don't use. That's something that you might want to go through and ask yourself, is this something that I need to keep? Another category of items that I pared down on but wished I would have done it so much sooner are plant pots. I love plants. In my house video, I also talked about plants. I have names for all of my plants. Do you guys have names for your plants? My one that I got for myself when my dad passed away is a plant called Happy. And Happy has grown quite big now. And Happy has had to get transplanted a few times. So I'm not saying that I shouldn't have some plant pots for my plants that are going to outgrow their pots, but I had way too many. These things took up 2 giant shelves in my garage. Some of these plant pots were in colors that I didn't need anymore, or didn't coordinate with my house, or just in textures that I didn't like, or they were in disrepair. I had some with cracks in them. I had 10 of the same size pot. And of course, I'm always going to veer toward the one that I like the most. Our home should be our happy place, so fill it with things you love and that speak to you. Oh boy, the baking supplies. I love to bake. I actually like to bake more than I like to cook. And I especially love to bake now that I have my old stove. Well, it's my new old stove. It's vintage. It's 1950s. Anyway, ever since I got that stove, I absolutely love to bake. And so I went a little crazy in the baking supply department. I had multiple baking sheets for cookies. I had multiple muffin pans and cupcake pans. I didn't need all of that because my oven can only accommodate 1 pan at a time. So I pared down to only 2. One is in preparation for the stuff coming out of the oven, and one is in the oven. Also had utensils that I absolutely didn't need, such as this bread kind of like wire whisk thing, where you use it to scrape out the bowl when you're making bread. But I only make bread a handful of times a year. I wish that I made it more, but the reality is that I don't, and I could just use my hands in order to scrape it out. Another couple items that I parted ways with was my bundt pan, my tart pan, which I absolutely never used, and my spring foam pan for making cheesecake. I only used that once because I had a cheesecake disaster. I was making a cheesecake for my nephew for his birthday, and the recipe called for 7 little boxes of cream cheese. Well, I should have questioned that, but I didn't. My cheesecake ended up coming out of the oven like a souffle. It was so tall that it looked like a chef's hat. It was the craziest thing you've ever seen. Did it taste good? Yes. Did it look good? No. And I've been afraid to make a cheesecake ever since. Do you have some items like me that you haven't used, or you have visions of yourself using it, but it either didn't turn out right, like my cheesecake, or you just never used it at all, like my tart pan? I would go through and ask yourself if you need those because they just clog up your cabinets. And those are the things that you just use infrequently. For me, I'm a cupcake maker and I'm a cookie baker. And those are the things that I make generally. I did keep my cake pans just in case I need those because I do make cakes here and there. That is something I have in my rotation. But the rest of it, I parted ways with. And I think that you might want to as well. Now this next one is something I wish I knew before I started to declutter. I wish I chose hangers that were all the same color and all the same kind. It's also super visually appealing. I love to see a closet that has a uniform look like that. It just feels really good. Once every hanger is filled up, that forces you to declutter something or not buy anything new. If some of your outdoor items are in disrepair, you can get rid of those as well. For instance, I had a little white ball table. It was a mess. It had seen better days. So I washed that table up and I was able to get it to a point where I felt good about it again. But if that's not the case and you have things that are falling apart, I would part ways with those. And if this is an item that you actually use, but it's no longer good, you can replace that with something that you like or that functions better. Another thing that comes to mind is I had these two huge storage bins that I'd keep on my patio. And at one point, they were really useful. I keep my kids' outdoor toys in them. But after the kids grew up, I didn't need them any longer. So I was able to just part ways with them and let someone else enjoy them. So check your outdoor area. See if there's any things that you can identify that are no longer necessary or that you don't use anymore.